I am also delighted to introduce our 2022 commencement speaker, Chip McLean. The graduates don't know this yet, but you grew up with Chip in your life in some way, I would hazard to guess. Chip serves as the Senior Vice President, Head of Business Affairs and Business Development for Disney Music Group. Yeah? And as a General Manager of the Disney Concerts Worldwide. That ring a bell for any of you when you were in your preteen years? Which he helped to launch. He also serves as the Walt Disney Company's senior executive responsible for Disney Music Publishing. Over his 16-year tenure with Disney, Chip has led the development and implementation of many innovative business initiatives and strategic alliances for the company, including recently overseeing Disney Music Group's successful efforts in structuring, negotiating, and closing new deals for fortifying their global relationship with the recorded music and music publishing partners around the world. He launched his career as an associate attorney with a prominent Washington, D.C. communications law firm. He later joined the new media practice group of Wilson, Sonsini, Goodrich, and Posadi in Palo Alto, California. In 1995, he joined Warner Brothers Records, serving in various capacities there, including as Vice President of Business and Legal Affairs. A native of Southern California, he graduated magna cum laude from UCLA with a BA in communications with business emphasis. He earned his law degree from Stanford Law School. Please help me to warmly welcome Chip McLean.
I have to put on special glasses for this. Good morning. Well, after passing several other ceremonies on the way here, on behalf of everybody wearing a black or dark colored robe, I'd like to start by acknowledging the air conditioning. I was recently speaking with a fellow UCLA comm alum who gave this very keynote address at the department's commencement ceremony about 15 years ago. He had a famous comedian client help him with his speech. He said it was fantastic, and his one piece of advice for me was to make absolutely sure that I started with something really, really hilarious. Awesome advice. Unfortunately, I don't know any professional comedians. So in lieu of hilarious, I'm going to settle for something merely sincere. This has been an incredible week. We celebrated our daughter Harper's 8th grade culmination earlier this week, and then the day after our daughter Charlie's high school graduation. They're sitting right over there. Congratulations, ladies. Your mom and I are very proud of you. I honestly cannot think of a better way to cap off this amazing week than by being here today to celebrate all of you. Congratulations, class of 2022. You have made it. I can only imagine what the past 2.5 years of your time here has been like as you've continued to work towards your degree. You've successfully navigated some seriously challenging studies, overcoming incredibly difficult circumstances and disruption precipitated by an unprecedented period in our history, as Carrie mentioned earlier. And now you're here. And we're all here to celebrate you and your accomplishment. And I would add to thank the incredible faculty and staff who went to extraordinary lengths to make your achievement possible. I'm deeply honored to have been invited to join you today as part of the first in-person graduation at UCLA since 2019, which is incredible. I would hope that today you're not worrying about what's next. You're in the present celebration mode, exactly where you should be. You've earned it. But at some point, when the pomp and circumstance is over and the applause fades, you'll likely find yourself thinking about your next chapter. It's exciting. A lot of graduation speeches offer sage advice about life, love, gratitude, and the pursuit of spiritual well-being. Really profound stuff that's way over my head. When Carrie invited me to speak to you today, I told her I wasn't really sure what I could say that might be helpful or inspiring, and she suggested that maybe I could just simply share a bit about my path after UCLA and some of the things I've learned along the way so far. So I shall. But rather than go big and philosophical, I'm going to focus on an area that's admittedly somewhat narrow, and practical, but one that can bring great joy and some stress in ways that can profoundly impact our broader lives and relationships. I'm talking about our professional paths, our careers, our desire to do well while doing good. Each of you are here today because you're driven to do something important with lasting impact, and with that ambition comes pressure that you've put on yourselves. And whether you're heading directly from here into the job market or will do so after completing a PhD, a JD, or some other advanced degree, the first chapter as you step into your career can bring with it an ominous sense of high stakes to immediately get a great job with a perfectly in-focus career objective to achieve, advance, and persevere until you reach some sort of glorious success fantasy that mainly exists in our heads. And all that'll work perfectly as long as everything goes exactly as planned and you seamlessly find yourself attaining spectacular levels of achievement and fulfillment at each step along the way. But for most of us, it doesn't tend to unfold that way, at least not without some hiccups. How many of you can say that you sat at your high school graduation knowing exactly the path you would follow to get here today? And since then, it's been autopilot with no unexpected rough patches or navigational adjustments along the way. Not many, I would imagine. That's because college is generally viewed as a place we go to discover our path, or at least to hone a path that we envisioned prior to our arrival. Course corrections during college are accepted. They're encouraged. The whole thing is built to facilitate just that. And thank goodness for the quarter system, where you can work your butt off for 10 weeks in a subject that you quickly realize you have no interest in or positively dislike. But you know that if you study hard and master the subject, you can complete the work, move on, and never have to look back again. I recently read that over 80% of college students decide to switch majors, and of the 20% who do not, over half of those would have switched if they could go back again. That's over 90%. Why would we expect our careers after college to be any different? They really aren't, or at least they shouldn't be. Plenty of students graduate with a high degree of confidence that they know exactly what they want to do, and some of them are right. And if that turns out to be you, consider yourself fortunate. For the rest of you, the path may have some speed bumps, some intersections, and some uncertainty, and require some navigational refinements along the way. That is normal. Just take it in stride and rest easy in the knowledge that you're at the wheel and in control of where you want to go. In my case, I had what I initially thought was my path disrupted almost immediately as I left the starting gates after law school. One of the most fortuitous things that has happened to me in my career thus far was getting laid off from my first job as a lawyer. That precipitated what felt at the time like a pretty epic course correction in my career, but I realized later that it was just one of many intersections where I had to make an unexpected turn on a long and somewhat interesting path that I'm still on. I started college at UC San Diego, a school I selected because I was stubbornly intent on forging my own path, and none of my friends had applied there. I literally had no idea what I wanted to do, but I declared a major in electrical engineering because I kind of liked my electronics class in high school. Genius. When I got to La Jolla, I found myself surrounded by an impressive array of incredibly brilliant and driven students, all of whom had clearly known since childhood that they were born destined to be electrical engineers. That was not me, and my early coursework proved it. I realized almost immediately that I was pointed in the wrong direction and I needed to make a fairly big change. I had been in touch with a good friend who was here at UCLA and was loving it. He was excited about having found the Communication Studies Department, what it was called then, a program that he was planning to apply for in short order. His enthusiasm was encouraging and the reasons for it resonated with me, so I transferred to UCLA. And a few quarters later, I applied to communications as well. It felt like home. Wonderful people, incredible teachers, a sense of community, and some of the most interesting and challenging courses and studies I could have ever imagined. As my senior year approached, I was finding real satisfaction in my studies, but I realized I had no idea yet what I wanted to do for a career. So having loved Professor Rosenthal's course in legal communication, I sort of defaulted into law school, hoping that a great idea, some sort of career epiphany, might come to me at some point over the 3 years of law school. That didn't happen. So as I approached my law school graduation, I did something that seemed sort of creative at the time. I took communications and law, and I joined a communications law firm in Washington, D.C. Within a few months of joining, I was placed, not by my choice, in the cable television practice group, where the focus was on state and federal regulatory matters relating to cable television system operators. It doesn't sound very exciting, and it was worse than that for me. I I tried, but 6 months in, I was feeling pretty dreadful, bored, stuck, and 100% confidence that I was again on the wrong path, heading someplace I had no interest going. Fortunately, a partner I had met during my earlier summer internship at the firm was the head of the radio and television broadcast practice group, and he knew that I was a big music fan. He mentioned a new matter that the firm was handling that involved the local modern rock radio station, the station that I listened to every day, and I asked if I could work on the project, even though it was outside of the cable TV group's area, and he helped make that happen. One day, when I was out at the radio station doing some on-site research, I saw a rock band that I was going to see in concert that weekend walk into the studio for an on-air interview. At that moment, I had a mini career epiphany. I knew I needed to get out of Washington, definitely out of the regulatory side of things, and find a way to get closer to the creative process, to the artists, and to the music that they make. The next day, I excitedly shared my personal discovery with the two partners who led the cable television practice group. Their faces made it very clear that they were markedly less excited about my discovery than I was. Little did I know at the time, but our law firm had been growing incredibly quickly over the past several years, too quickly as it turned out, acquiring other firms and attorneys at a pace that left it bloated and unstable. It was beginning what would turn out to be a several-year collapse, but the immediate next step in the firm's history was an upcoming major layoff, and I had just unwittingly volunteered to be the poster child for the downsizing. Within a few weeks, 32 of the 35 first-year associates were told they no longer had jobs. I was one of them. But the good news was we still had a salary for a little while, and our only obligation was to find our next job. A generous severance arrangement, which I tried to take full advantage of. I read every trade publication in the entertainment space I could find every day, and when I read an article about a project or a deal that sounded interesting, I wrote letters to the people involved expressing my interest in learning more and asked for a meeting. It worked pretty well. People like to talk about themselves, how they see things, their journeys, and their broader stories. You know this to be true because you've been witnessing it since I started talking. Anyway, I met a ton of people and learned a lot over that period, and with each passing week and month, I felt I was getting closer to honing in on a path that could be my own. I still know, work with, and am friends with many people that I met during that time. It remains one of the most productive periods in my entire professional career, and I was unemployed. I discovered something about where I wanted to head, and I met a lot of good people who were willing and able to help me move in that direction. Just a couple of short years later, I landed what was for me a dream job at Warner Brothers Records, the most well-represented label in my own record collection. When I subsequently was recruited to join Disney Music Group years later, I had been an attorney for about 15 years and was ready to try something different, so I told them I would come as long as my job was in something like business development, not legal, and they agreed. At the time I joined, there was a lot going on at Disney. We had just acquired Pixar, and closer to my area, a number of music-related projects were exploding on Disney Channel, including High School Musical, The Cheetah Girls, and Hannah Montana. You just made me feel really old. All of those launched within about 6 months of each other, and the aggregate soundtrack sales, that's an old term now, we're in the tens of millions of units, and two of those albums, High School Musical and Hannah Montana, reached #1 on the Billboard chart. I had nothing to do with that, but it was pretty exciting, and I was eager to quickly make my mark, so I went to my first soundtrack meeting with an enthusiastic but hardly revolutionary business development idea. We should sell t-shirts and merchandise at the concerts when all these artists go out on tour. There was a little bit of laughter in the room, and I was quickly shut down. There would be no merch sales because there'd be no tours. I remember somebody saying, "These are actors, not artists." And without real artists and their managers and teams to put tours on the road, it simply could not happen. So I asked why we couldn't put the tours together and go out ourselves. The room was incredulous. The next morning I was called and asked to go to the office of the Disney Music Group's chairman. It had been about 14 years since I was laid off at the law firm, and I thought I was going to be striking a double. The chairman, Bob Cavallo, told me that he had heard about the meeting and the idea that I was so excited about, and then he said something that surprised me. This is my best imitation. "You're right. We should be producing these concert tours, but we don't have anyone in-house who knows how to do that, so I'm appointing you. And you know nothing about producing concert tours, so I'm going to introduce you to a lot of people who know how to do this, and we're going to get this going." And that was that. Before coming to Disney, Bob had managed or helped manage artists ranging from Love and Spoonful, Earth, Wind and Fire, Green Day, Prince, and many others, so he knew a thing or two about concert tours. And he was essential in our launch of Disney Concerts as a business. Flash forward to current, and we're currently doing nearly 1,000 concerts in over 50 countries per year. And a number of those concert events are now being filmed to create concert specials on Disney+. It's not a massive business, but it's real, and it's a lot of fun. Just a few years after we started the concert business, the guy who originally recruited me to Disney and who oversaw legal got fired, so I was asked if I could also be head of business and legal affairs in addition to running concerts. Given how much fun I was having running the concert stuff, I didn't mind putting the lawyer hat on again, so I happily accepted, figuring that 2 jobs were better than none. When I was a kid, I loved to put on shows in our garage or backyard for our parents and neighbors. The onstage talent was usually my brother and sisters and other kids who lived on our street. It was not me. But I loved it, and I never imagined a career in it. These days, there are still times, especially at opening night concert at places like the Hollywood Bowl or the Lincoln Center or Tokyo Forum, when I find myself thinking about how lucky I was to have gotten fired from my first job. That moment was the pivot that helped me get set in the right direction, or at least my right direction. I'm not necessarily advocating purposely getting fired as a career development tool, but you gotta play the hand you're given. So what does all this mean? I don't know, but thanks for indulging me. I guess if I had to summarize some of the things that I learned at various points along the way, I'd start by emphasizing that it's good to invest in yourself and your development. Be proactive in building expertise in your field, but also give real thought to the direction and trajectory of your path. Read and learn as much as you can from trade publications, join a professional organization, attend seminars, do whatever you need to do to meet people within and outside your organization or area of specialty. Learn from those ahead of you, experts and others who have been involved in areas or developments that you're interested in. Be curious. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to admit when you don't know something, and be transparent. Don't be shy about asking others for advice or simply asking them what they're working on and where they see that leading. You might learn something and get a little excited too. Treat every workday like a school day and endeavor to learn something new each day. It doesn't have to be specific to your career. Just keep your brain and yourself in growth and development mode. And stretch. Reach up for projects with great impact, but also reach laterally into adjacent areas. Look over the fence and think often about the possibility about stepping outside of your comfort zone to explore. Volunteer for challenging projects that may not be right in your area of expertise, but seem like they could be opportunities to grow and learn something new. You might surprise yourself. And remember that you don't necessarily need to pursue a path down one specific lane. If you have more than one area of interest, look for ways you might overlap things in a creative fashion where 1 + 1 could equal 3 in ways that others might not have imagined. There's no reason your career can't look a bit like a double major. And use your outreach to build a rich network of relationships. Find mentors who can help you, who can serve as sounding boards, and share their wisdom and perspective as you navigate your course. Ask them questions. As I mentioned earlier, people love to talk about themselves, and you can leverage that energy to gain visibility and learn about new areas that may speak to you. It's an incredibly easy, enjoyable, and fulfilling way to keep learning and to develop new relationships while simultaneously keeping your eyes open for the next opportunity to contribute something meaningful. Pay attention. You won't need much help paying attention to your job. Those at times can be totally consuming. But be sure to pay attention to those around you, your friends, your colleagues, leaders in the organizations you work for, and others in your lives. Talk to them, listen to them, and pay attention to how you feel when you hear them describing what excites them about what they're up to or about to be up to. And don't forget to reflect, to check in with yourself from time to time on how you're feeling about the path you're on. Are you happy? Are you finding your current course fulfilling? And if you get to a point where something's telling you that a change is needed, where things may be mostly going okay, but you're feeling that something's not quite working, whether it's complacency, stagnation, or just knowing that there must be something more gratifying out there, focus in on that. It probably won't be a single unmistakable aha moment. It'll be more subtle. Whatever the case, just know that you have the power to break the inertia. You don't need to know exactly where you want to end up before you take a first step. Focus on ways that you can slowly do more of what feels more right for you. That's all that you need to start. Each little step may carry with it some risk, but with that comes the opportunity for incremental clarity, an easing of some anxiety, and a growing confidence that you're discovering your path and your future. And even if it takes getting fired or laid off for you to actually realize that you've been on the wrong path, take in that realization. And although a moment like that always feels like a setback, do your best to see it for what it also is, an opportunity. An opportunity to reset, to course correct, and to get closer to where you want to head. Sort of random, but a couple of weeks ago I had an outpatient procedure necessitated by my unwillingness to admit that I'm no longer 25. In the pre-op meeting, after the anesthesiologist told me that she'd be administering a sedation cocktail that included propofol and fentanyl, I asked her how long she'd been a licensed anesthesiologist. As a longtime fan of Michael Jackson, Prince, and Tom Petty, that suddenly seemed like a smart question to ask. She appeared incredibly expert, projected supreme confidence, and looked to be in her 40s or 50s, so I was expecting a response that referenced the career that began in the 1990s. Nope. She told me that she'd been an anesthesiologist since 2017. She had previously been in the sciences in research, but after well over a decade on that path, she decided she wanted to be closer to those she was helping, so she quit her job and went to medical school. And after that and a 2.5-year residency, she became an anesthesiologist and loves it. I commended her on making such a bold mid-career pivot. She said she'd initially been a little nervous about the decision, but remembered something that her mom told her back when she was struggling to find her path in college. You can always change your major. And she did. She just waited until she was around 40 to do it. All right, I'm over time, so I'm going to close by repeating myself. Congratulations again on what you've accomplished and on the exciting next step in your journey. It'll be great. There will be plenty of highs, but don't expect every step to be bliss, as you won't always be spending every moment doing exactly what you want, and you should embrace that. Many of you will no doubt get started in a direction that makes great sense for you and just roll on down that road. Others will have journeys a bit more like mine that require a little navigational attendance to get on the right course. And if you do find yourself heading down a path that's not quite right, don't stress. Just take a breath. You can make a course correction. You'll likely make several along the way. Play the long game. And if you ultimately come to realize that a major reset is necessary, a serious career do-over, please take it from someone who went from drafting legal research memos on the scintillating impact of the 1992 Cable Television Act to overseeing the Walt Disney Company's global concert business, and in between learned how to apply for unemployment. You can always change your major. Thank you.